Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This week's video is really for someone who is experiencing burnout. Specifically, it's for that burnt out caregiver. So, that person who is the helper, the doer, the person that everybody relies on, someone who seems like you're so put together on the outside, you have it all together, but on the inside, you're really falling apart. So if this is you, or if you know someone that is burnt out and is a caregiver, then please share this video with them because I will be sharing some ways that you can start to shift from being this burnt out to starting to care for yourself. So if you're feeling numb, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling just exhausted, irritable, overwhelmed, or just apathetic in general, these are all signs of your burnout. So this video is definitely for you. So first things first, I just want to share some really quick examples of what burnout looks like. It's not always obvious, it's not always loud, especially when you're the one who is burnt out. So just some things that you might resonate with is, eating whatever is easy, even though after that you feel really guilty or you experience some kind of shame or you feel really bad for emotional eating or eating foods that you didn't really want to eat. It's snapping at the people that you really love, being irritable, being frustrated with them, and it's just small things that might set you off when in reality that's not who you are. Typically when you start to snap or you feel really annoyed, that is not normally who you are when you're not feeling burnt out. It's feeling really lonely or really invisible or isolated, even in a room full of people, even around the people who love you the most. Or forcing yourself to feel grateful even though what you really feel is resentful or exhausted. So these are all some of the more subtle signs of burnout. So kind of, pause here for a second, evaluate where you are in your life if you are feeling any of these, and ask yourself, what is really going on? What is the cause of this burnout? So before I share some small but really powerful things that you can do to start to move away from this feeling of burnout is, really just asking yourself, where do you want to be? How do you want to feel? Because a lot of times when you're burnt out, you're giving from a place of empty. You're running on fumes. There's really nothing there. And I'm sure you've heard the saying, even when you're flying, is put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on someone else. So it's much easier said than done, but that is the philosophy that you want to keep in the back of your mind as you're listening to the rest of this video. Okay, so number one of the most powerful things that you can do is start to build awareness. And the best way to do that is by talking to yourself. So when was the last time you actually asked yourself, what do I need right now? We ask that question of others all the time, of kids, of partners, of parents, of colleagues, of bosses. But when was the last time you actually just carved out 30 seconds, that's it, 30 seconds for yourself, and asked yourself, what do I need right now? Why this matters is because you rarely take the time to stop and listen to your answer. If you just really think about it, your answer is probably going to be quick, or it's going to be something that you just ignore or that you avoid, and you get distracted by the 10 other things that you need to do. So what I would recommend is once a day, just set a reminder, whether that's at 5 p.m. or first thing in the morning or the last thing that you do at night, whenever it feels like you have 30 seconds to spare uninterrupted, put a reminder and ask yourself, what do I need right now? Even if the answer initially is I don't know, because that's very normal when you're in the trenches and you're feeling so overwhelmed and burnt out. That's okay. The point here is developing this habit and developing this awareness to check in with yourself, because there is zero change without any kind of awareness. Okay, number two is treat your energy like it is finite. Treat it like money. That's a really good way to look at it. A lot of times people who are burnt out, they give, and give some more. So that has to change without the guilt, without the judgment, without any of that. So what I would recommend is make a list, make a list of all the things that you're doing right now that drain you. And of all the things that you're doing, make another column that says, the things that restore you. So you have two columns. You have one, which everything that you do that drains you, and what is it that you do that restores you. And just to simplify it, take one thing away from the list that drains you and start to add something from the list that restores you. So maybe it's doing yoga once a week that really restores you. Maybe on, what drains you is going grocery shopping. So maybe you take one thing away from that list and you don't physically go grocery shopping. Maybe you just order your groceries online. That way you have a little bit more time, and maybe you can go to another yoga class or do just another 15 minutes of stretching and add that to your routine. So make it really simple, make it really easy, but you need to really sit down and kind of have some checks and balances and figure out, what is taking away from you and what is adding to your energy levels. Number 3 is start to schedule in and make a list of emotional meals. What I mean by that is, you're there for everybody else emotionally, right? And a lot of times when you're drained, that leads to emotional eating. So how do you step away from emotional eating, but you still check in with your feelings? So just ask yourself, what is it that you need emotionally? And that's one step, at least, to stop eating food just for the sake of comfort and stop eating your feelings. So just take a second and ask yourself, what do I need emotionally? And make that list of all the things that you can do that would feed your emotions. It could be listening to music, it could be connecting with friends, it could be going for a walk, maybe volunteering, maybe spending time with your pup. I mean, so many options. So start to make that list, and the next time you ask yourself, what do I need right now emotionally? Refer to that list and try to do something from that list. In fact, I would go as far as to say is that schedule 10 minutes of an emotional snack daily. It could be 10 minutes of prayer, it could be 10 minutes of silence, it could be 10 minutes of sunlight, whatever it is that nourishes your soul and not just your body. And 10 minutes is very doable. If you don't want to start with 10, start with 5. That's all right. And again, make it simple, make it easy, but schedule it in and hold yourself accountable to make sure that you will give yourself 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever it is that you decided on. Okay, number 4 is you have to start rewriting that inner dialogue. This is one of the hardest things that you will do, but you have to start somewhere. So start to notice your self-talk. A lot of times for caregivers, burnt out caregivers especially, who give, and then give some more, they tend to feel very guilty when they don't have any more left to give. So the inner dialogue oftentimes is, I'm not doing enough, or yeah, definitely I can show up here, I can show up there, I can do this, or so-and-so did so much for me, I should be able to do the same. So this is the only way for me to show my love. This is the only way I can give to this individual or to give to my family. So a lot of times that negative dialogue is full of guilt, it's full of pressure, and it's full of unrealistic expectations. So it's time to start changing that. And you don't need to do it immediately, but just start to observe your dialogue. When you're completely spent and you really have no more energy left, or you're feeling really irritable, or you're feeling really numb, and you're still pushing yourself, just stop for a second and observe that dialogue. What are you telling yourself? How are you getting yourself to do something when you really have nothing left to give? You have to start changing that dialogue. And then what that dialogue sounds like is, just pretend you're talking to a friend, or you're talking to your partner, or to your kid, or to an elderly parent. And what would you tell them? Probably wouldn't say, yeah, you're not doing enough, you need to do a little bit more. No, the tone would be different, the dialogue would be different, and it might be, yes, of course you're tired, you're doing so much, it's okay to rest, it's okay to take 10 minutes for yourself, it's okay to say no. So you start to give yourself permission to be human again, and to stop giving so much constantly. So first things first is just pay attention to that inner dialogue. Once you notice the pattern, start to change it a little bit, start to reframe it, start to question it. And then last but not least, number 5 is make a promise to yourself and actually keep it. A lot of times when you're burnt out, you are the lowest priority, and it's so easy to forego your needs, even disconnect from your needs and commitments that you make to yourself, that you lose that trust, that you might tell yourself, oh yeah, I really want to go to the gym 3 days a week, but guess what, something else comes up, and you drop your own needs and your own wants, and you go ahead and do something else, and you start to provide for somebody else, or you start to take care of something else that wasn't really on your agenda. So How do you start to prioritize yourself again? It's by keeping the promises that you make to yourself. You need to rebuild that trust with yourself. So make that promise really small. It might be, today I'm going to read just one page of this book that I've been wanting to read. Or it could be, I want to journal one day this week, and you go ahead and you journal. Or you decide that, you know what, I deserve this coffee. I really want to go ahead and spend $5 and have my macchiato or whatever it is that you want to drink. And you go ahead and you spend that money on yourself, and you go ahead and you do something that you really enjoy. So you have to start sticking to the promises that you make to yourself. You cannot self-sabotage. You cannot treat yourself like a second-class citizen. And the only way to do that is when you make these promises really simple and really easy to do. The harder you make them, the harder it feels to achieve them. And then the more you're in this vicious cycle where you're not able to fulfill commitments you're making to yourself. And you're constantly breaking the trust that you have in yourself and eventually ruining that self-confidence. So pick something really short, really quick, but promise yourself something and do it once a week. That this week I promise myself to do this, and go ahead and follow through with it. Follow through is really the key to get out of this burnout phase and to be in a place where you can start prioritizing yourself and actually paying attention to your own needs. So to wrap it up, I've given you 5 really simple actions. Like I always say, pick one or pick all, but start somewhere, do something. And remember, burnout is really about rebuilding that connection with yourself, doing it gently, doing it consistently, and doing it compassionately. Be patient with yourself. None of this is going to change overnight. But the beauty of this is once you start doing even one thing from the list that I've given you, it will have a ripple effect, and you will want to do more, and you will be in a better position to start to move away from experiencing this burnout and feeling like you're actually living your life the way you wanted to live it. So, as always, I'm here for you with any questions. I'm happy to, listen to your feedback and your comments. I really appreciate you stopping by. If you want to keep in touch, I do blog every other week, and you can also follow me on Instagram. All the information is in the description of the video. Other than that, thank you so much for stopping by, and I will see you here very soon. Thank you.